Ready?
Ready? Might be good to make a little joke about Amazon fans going past. Steve is that.
What is the joke there?
Because the Amazon warehouse is just around there. So,
Yeah, but what's the joke?
um,
Is the joke simply noticing that something is happening?
I'd like them to sponsor the show one day.
Okay.
They get their advertisement in the background.
Right. That's the joke. Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is the transfer review. I don't look like Stephen Howson, but with the sun coming out, I may well just sound like him. Let's start with the big boy. Harry Kane looks as though he's going to Bayern Munich. This is coming from Fabrizio Romano, BBC Sport. David Ornstein breaking the news yesterday as well. He will be, well, by the time this goes out, he may well have already completed his medical. The deal is agreed. Tottenham have agreed. Harry Kane has finally agreed as well to join Bayern Munich. We're looking at over 100 million euros with a potential 20 million further in add-ons. Kane will sign a 4-year deal. He's already in Germany. Medical should be a formality. That one to Manchester United now. Obviously, we talk about how they're coming to Man United. We've been talking about Harry Kane all summer. Harry Kane to Manchester United, 0 out of 10. Game over. Dunzo Kablunzo. He's out of here. Next up. Now this, with Harry, we'll talk about Harry Maguire in a minute. With him going, it sparks an entire situation for Erik ten Hag. And first up on this list of potential replacements, of which we have 2 to talk about today. Benjamin Pavard, the 27-year-old Bayern Munich centre-back / right-back, although apparently he wants to leave Bayern Munich in order to cement himself as a starting centre-back rather than this kind of half auxiliary kind of yes, maybe, bit of bobs, left, right, centre-back, all that. He wants to be a centre-back. According to Fabrizio Romano, again, he's open to leaving Bayern Munich. He'd love to join the club and try some Premier League experience. Ten Hag will decide soon. Favourite option between Pavard and Todibo. Backup option, Tapsoba, right? I like this. Ten Hag will decide soon about a favourite option. Like, they've gone to him and gone, right, Eric, Maguire's going, although, well, no, I'll give a rating on that in a bit. Maguire's going. We're going to need a replacement. We're thinking one of Pavard or Todibo, and he goes, I can't make my mind up. I'll decide soon. He obviously knows. You can't not have a preference. How does he not know which one he wants? Let me eat my dinner first, and then come back to me like some spoilt young king. Like a young Dutch prince. Mr. Eric, which one would you like now? I can't make my mind up. Away with you, servant. I'll bring you the decision when it's right and ready. So apparently he needs to decide who he likes more out of Pavard and Todibo. Presumably he's watching YouTube highlights of them both and he wants to see who's the better player. You would think that, he'd probably have a preference. So let's start with Pavard then. Apparently the talks have already started. Apparently he's, potentially the favourite. He fancies it. He's 27 years old, which is a really good age as well. I'm going to give Pavard to Manchester United. I think it's quite likely. I'm going to go 6 out of 10. Hello, mate. You all right?
Sorry.
It's all right?
I'm a bit of a fan.
Oh, nice one. How you doing? You okay?
Not too bad, yeah.
Right, I've just met Scott, who is a Manchester United fan from Liverpool, whose mum used to fancy Alan Shearer, so she was a Newcastle fan. It's very confusing, but very nice to meet you, Scott. Let's move on to Todibo. Erik ten Hag, again, will soon decide his favourite option between Pavard and Todibo. I love it. No, I don't know at the moment. I'm thinking about other things. Apparently, Nice's manager and captain have both admitted that Manchester United transfer target Jean-Claire Todibo could leave the club this summer. He seems to me, and again, just because we've heard some reports from other journalists that there have been more concrete talks with Pavard, I think maybe, even though Ten Hag reportedly hasn't decided yet, that Todibo might be the backup option. So I'm going to say I think the interest is real. I think he's a very good player and I think United could well sign him, but at this moment I think I can't give any more than a 3 out of 10. Right then, Amrabat, next up on the ins list. Amrabat Sofian, I don't need to say anymore, I've said both of his names now in the wrong way around. Fiorentina, been a target for a while. We've seen Darmish on the channel. We've seen multiple journalists talking about Sofian Amrabat. He's clearly a target. He's someone that was always linked with a possible move after Fred and or McTominay and or Donny van der Beek were to leave the club. We'll get on to outs in a minute, but Fred is seemingly out of the door. Now does the door open up to Amrabat? It's interesting though, isn't it? Because it was always said when a midfielder goes, we can get him in. Or when we sell the likes of Maguire, we could get Amrabat in. Now Maguire's gone, it seems as though we're trying to get a centre-back. So where does this leave the approach for Amrabat? Are we still prioritising a defensive midfielder? Or are we now trying to get a replacement for Maguire using the Fred and Maguire money? However, I do think if United let Fred go, if United let Donny go as well, and there's still rumours of a potential move for Scott McTominay if United can get around 40 million, if they all leave, we need midfielders. And I also think that it would be a good move. It's almost like we're moving towards having particular roles and backups in those roles where, you know, we've got Mount as our sort of up and down number 8, where last year it was Eriksen. Eriksen is now probably the backup in that position. We've got Bruno Fernandes, and again, Mount can be the backup in that position. Maybe even Sancho can be the backup in that position after we've seen him playing more centrally. We don't have a backup for Casemiro. And yes, Fred can do a bit of that, McTominay can do a bit of that, but they're not specialists. And it seems like we're moving towards a specialist sort of setup in that midfield area. We need a specialist backup to Casemiro. Amrabat ticks the boxes. Even though this deal doesn't feel like it's on the tip of the tongue just yet, I still think this one's a 5 out of 10 because I do see this happening at some point. It just depends if we can get the funds sorted, if we can get the centre-back replacements in, but I'm going to have to give it a 5 out of 10. Right, let's move on to some outs then, and let's start with Fred. We've had the here we go. I don't even need to say anymore. Fred to Fenerbahce. Barring a miracle, this is done, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Moving on to Harry Maguire. Again, we've had the here we go. We've had BBC. He's going to West Ham. United are even paying 6 million quid's worth of his wages to get him off the books. 24 million if you include the 6 million that we've got to pay back to Maguire. I think that's decent money for a player that was surplus to requirements, and not just surplus to requirements, but he'd become an issue, hadn't it? He was the captain. He's a bit of figure of fun. I don't think that we needed that presence, and I don't think he needed that reputation as well. Maguire to West Ham, 10 out of 10, done deal. No way that this doesn't happen now. Again, barring an absolute miracle, but even then, he's not staying at United, so Maguire out, 10 out of 10. Donny van de Beek, negotiations with Real Sociedad for the loan of Donny van de Beek. Discussions are ongoing about a loan fee, how to cover Donny's salary, and also an option to buy clause. I don't know who Clause is, but you know, it seems like there's an option to buy Donny. Who's Clause? Right back for Marseille. Player keen on the move. It's done, innit? It never even got going, really. That's the mad thing. We signed him in the fastest transfer of all time. It happened in a weekend, and then he just never did anything. He never played, and when he did play, he was underwhelming. And there was this sort of period where people on Twitter especially seemed to think that if only Solskjaer would play him, he'd prove how good he was. We've since had 3 managers in that time, between then and now, and none of them have fancied him. It's not working out. He's not had a great record with injuries. I think he will leave. To Sociedad specifically, I'll give it a 5 out of 10, but to leave Manchester United this summer, I would give an 8 out of 10. I think the time's up for Donny van de Beek. Let's move on to a more interesting one now. Dean Henderson. We're in a right pickle here. So let's go with this. This is from The Express, but again, multiple journalists, multiple sources have spoken about this. Goalkeeper Dean Henderson is yet to sign for Forest due to an injury. The 26-year-old tore his thigh in January and is, still out? It's August. Who's out for 8 months with a thigh injury? There remains a real threat that the strenuous medical required by Forest risks aggravating his injury and causing more damage. What is this strenuous medical by Forest? Like Nottingham Forest have still got Brian Clough doing the medicals. Make him run upstairs. What do you mean strenuous medical? Like, they're notorious for their unbelievable medical. Right, here's what we do. Every other club, you go to the training ground, you complete the basic medical, you get signed. For whatever reason, Nottingham Forest Medical starts at the heart of Robin Hood at Major Oak in Sherwood Forest. From there, you will complete a medieval-style assault course that involves archery. It involves the 3 main sports of medieval England: throwing stones, archery, and just fating bears and that. Once you've completed that, we will do a very strenuous thigh test. If you've got any tears, they will be ruptured even further, and you won't be able to sign. I don't know what the strenuous medical, I don't know what that is, but Forest are seemingly doing things slightly differently to everyone else. It is worrying though, isn't it? Dean Henderson, he's been out for 8 months with a thigh injury. Like, I don't think I've ever heard of that before. There's also this thing that Tom Heaton's now injured. we've just sold Kovar. We don't have a backup goalkeeper at the minute. We've only got Onana. I've heard David De Gea is available on a free. It might be worth getting him in on a short-term deal just until we've patched it up, because obviously he's proven he's won a Premier League. Maybe we should get him in on a short-term deal to patch this up. But at the minute, I can't see Dean Henderson leaving, because who is going to be number 2? Although he's not even fit, so he ain't number 2 either. All right, on that basis, 4 out of 10. I think Forest have just signed a keeper as well, haven't they? None of it makes sense. Dean Henderson to Forest. I've got to slow it down a bit. 4 out of 10. And finally, Scott McTominay. He's set to stay at Manchester United now this summer, according to Darmesh. He also revealed that West Ham were a little bit further away on their valuation. West Ham have since signed Julian Alvarez from Ajax. Set to stay, apparently. But there are still rumours of him going to maybe a West Ham or another club. United want 40 million for him. Newcastle were potentially in for him before, but they've signed Tonali, so that doesn't look like an option. West Ham, another one, they've signed Alvarez, so that doesn't look like an option. I don't know where he'd go at this point. And like I said, we already need backup midfielders. If you're letting Donny go, you're letting Fred go. We've only signed one midfielder. We can't really let a third go without signing another. So, yeah, maybe he will stay now. And I think he's a decent option as well. He's a good player, isn't he? He's not a great player. He's not particularly brilliant at anything. But he's a bit of a jack of all trades. He can kind of do a bit of everything. And not a bad player to play in the cup games and, bring on as a sub to give Casemiro a rest here and there. Glazers out, protests from the car there, which is great to see, isn't it? Although it's bad to see that we're still talking about the Glazers, because I thought they'd have been gone by now. Scott McTominay to leave, 3 out of 10. Glazers to leave. At this point, that's only 3 out of 10 as well, unfortunately. However, when they do, if they do, we will be covering it all on Stretford Paddock. Ethan, how many Amazon vans have gone past? He's not counted. But so does that mean that it's definitely minimum 1 and you've not counted, or you've just not seen any because you've not been paying attention? He's not been paying attention, hey! But in the edit he'll be going back through and looking through all of them, and if we find any, we'll have the tally up. The sponsorship is inbound. Maybe when Steve gets back he can get that over the line. That's going to be all from me. This has been Transfer Review. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in a bit.